I'm going to call the Honourable Marianne Street.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And it's a pleasure to take my first call. It won't be my last call on the debate on this bill, because it's of real significance. And I'm aware that we're on part two, and part two is what I wish to direct my comments to. But just before I go to that, Mr. Chairman, I do want to note the appropriate timing or the timeliness of this bill, because, of course, there have been numbers of celebrations during the course of this year of 100 years of quality public service. This is the same year that we are celebrating, and the PSA, in fact, is celebrating its own existence, but we celebrate with them the delivery of quality public service. So when we come to looking at the state sector and the public finance reform bill, and this part that I'm going to detail in a moment, it seems to me to be a significant bill, obviously a very substantial bill, but a significant bill to bring in this year. And I hope that because of the nature of the accommodations that have been reached during the course of the Select Committee, Mr. Chair, that this bill will be durable and will contribute to the improved delivery of public service. So to get to part two, Mr. Chairman, I too want to follow on my colleague Louisa Wall and talk about the multi-category appropriation type, which is a new appropriation type to be provided for and enacted under this part two of the bill. And I'm aware that there are amendments to this part which have been agreed across the House, which include the full traceability of funds from year to year. And I want to state my support for this, Mr. Chair, by using an example where that has not been so apparent in recent times. And I want to refer to the appropriation for whānau ora. Whānau ora appropriation, which was a health initiative. In fact, the words say that. It was a health initiative, and one might have thought it would have come under the rubric of the Minister of Health, and so might have been examinable through estimates and appropriations that come before select committees for consideration. But no, when the Minister of Health appeared before the Health Select Committee to justify health appropriations in the last few years, he was unable, or unwilling really, but had made himself deliberately unable to offer transparency around the appropriation of government monies for the delivery of the Whānau Ora program. And so we were not able to examine the minister who was best qualified to know whether this health initiative was achieving health outcomes. My concern is not that the appropriation was handed over by that minister there, the Minister of Health, handed over to Te Puni Kōkiri and the Minister of Māori Affairs to answer to, but it was taken away from the transparency that needed to be delivered to the purpose for which that appropriation was established. In the setting up of a new appropriation type, to be called a multi-category appropriation, I hope that this means, together with the agreed amendment that will require full traceability of funds from year to year, that if any appropriation, let's take the example, for health purposes, is to be diverted out of the jurisdiction, if you like, the care, the oversight of the Minister of Health to somebody else, then that is entirely traceable by cross-referencing by calling it a multi-category appropriation and ensuring that the numbers of ministers who need to front,
Honourable Marianne Street.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. That the number of ministers who are responsible for that appropriation are able to come before a select committee for examination, and that the essential scrutiny can be applied. Because what has happened is that, if I go back to my whānau ora example, Mr. Chair, which is an example of bad practice, I think, not best practice, but what the example of the whānau ora appropriation is that nobody seems to be able to find what has been done precisely with the money that was appropriated. I would have thought that Mr. Ryle, as Minister of Health, could easily have come in before a select committee, a man of his ability, could have come before the select committee and said, this is what has happened with the whānau ora money. We have done it jointly with Te Puni Kōkiri, but it is a health initiative, so it sits under my portfolio. If such things are to happen and a health appropriation is to go somewhere else, let's call it, or let's use this facility that this part of the bill now gives us, and that is a multi-category appropriation, so that it may go across departments, across ministries, across purposes. Not at cross purposes, across purposes, so that, but at the same time, the appropriation and the accountability for it remain entirely transparent, and accountable, because that is what a good Public Finance Act ought to deliver. That is the quality that our state servants, despite their battering over the last 5 years, wish to provide for the citizens of this country. And if this bill can help us deliver that kind of accountability and transparency across increasingly complex areas of activity by the state, then that is a good thing. But let us make sure that that is what happens to this provision. I absolutely respect the good intentions of the members opposite, and I respect the fact that members on the Select Committee have agreed on improvements to this bill, having been very, very involved, not as a Member of Parliament, but as a very interested citizen and activist in the first State Sector Act in its development in 1986. And in fact, having written the Labour Party's paper in opposition to it, I have a real interest in how these kinds of services are delivered. The integrity of our public service structures are critically important to the quality of our government, the quality of our accountable apparatus, the quality of the transparency of that apparatus, and to our reputation for governance and transparency. Mr. Chairman, we have a very fine reputation for that. It's my hope that this new appropriation type, the multi-category appropriation type, can be used to ensure that this Public Finance Act, now amended for modern times, will deliver exactly the kind of transparency and accountability that a complex piece of legislation like this, the complex operation of the delivery of state services, requires in a modern society. Mr. Chairman, I'm very supportive of this. I have great optimism for this part of the bill, and I hope that we can proceed with this in a way that in the end can make us all proud of the Public Finance Act and the delivery of state services under its jurisdiction. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I call Reno Tirakatini.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Chair. It's a